kind of surprised that you're not, like, on board with me handing him the reins.
Really? Why would I be?
Under the dim light of string lights, the greens that had been arranged on the rooftop garden of the Metro Court sparkled, creating an ambience that was both relaxing and enjoyable. While she was looking through the evening's reports for the hotel, Nina Reeves was enjoying a glass of wine during the process. A little table was located in the far corner of the room, and she sat down at it. While she was running away from the drama and mayhem that seemed to be enveloping everyone else in Port Charles like an invisible shroud, she took great pleasure in the rare moments of serenity and calm that she was able to experience. On the other hand, the tranquility and peace would not be maintained for very long tonight. After that, a voice that was already recognizable broke the silence. "This is Nina. Am I able to bother you for a brief moment?" When Nina looked up, she was taken aback to see Drew Kane just a few feet away, his normally laid-back manner appearing somewhat tense. She was surprised. His appearance, which consisted of jeans and a leather jacket, gave the impression that he was a guy on a mission. While she was closing her folder, she made a motion toward the chair that was adjacent to her. With a slight inclination of her head, she greeted him and introduced herself as Drew. "To be sure, this is a surprise to me. Why are you here at such a late hour? Otherwise, if I were to make a guess." While they were seated together and smiling in a relatively determined manner, his penetrating eyes were attempting to communicate a combined sense of determination and concern for the situation. "Please lend me a hand in this matter." Inconsistent and incongruous partnership. Nina acted as if she had brought her eyebrows up. The fact that Drew reached out to her for assistance was not something that he did on a whim. Their relationship was cordial for the most part, but it was in no way near to being intimate. Her elbows were resting on the table, and she leaned forward as she sat there. "This must be something important if you are coming to me," she remarked, her tone containing equal parts interest and caution. "If you are coming to me, then this must be something significant. What precisely is taking place here?" A gentle sigh from Drew's mouth as he ran his fingers across his head at the same time. This discussion will focus on Carly. After learning about her opponent in the romantic department, Nina switched from being excited to being afraid. Carly Corinthos had a history that was both bitter and ambiguous. It was the result of a lengthy and laborious process that was carried out in words that were as difficult to read as a foreign alphabetic code. On the other hand, there was something in Drew's eyes that caused her to be uncomfortable about sending him elsewhere. I found it to be something that was extremely straightforward and unfiltered. Her words were carefully delivered. "I'm listening." It appeared as though Drew was considering how much information to divulge. "Carly is being probed by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, for engaging in insider trading, right?" Nina gave a slight nod, and she experienced a constriction in her gut. She felt a tugging of guilt throughout her body as her conscience went back to the tip that she had provided in an anonymous manner, which had triggered the investigation. Her face did not show any signs of emotion. "I am certainly aware of it," she stated. "She's going to have to face some serious consequences." Drew continued, maintaining a low voice throughout the entire conversation. "And despite the fact that we are doing everything in our power to combat this, the walls that surround us are becoming increasingly tight. It seems as if she is playing with the idea of losing everything." A frown appeared on Nina's face as she attempted to comprehend the role that she might have had in this catastrophe. "Drew, I am truly sorry, but I am not aware of this. What this has to do with me is something that I cannot comprehend." He leaned forward, and there was a strain in his posture that was almost palpable. "I need a way that will set the SEC on hold the speaker said. Although you have contacts in the corporate world and in the media, I have squandered the most of my relationships. And you, Nina, wield a great deal of power and influence. It is you who is the most capable of assisting me in reversing a narrative or exerting pressure on the individuals who are relevant to the situation. A problem of ethical urgency. Nina was taken aback by his proposition, and she stared at him. During the time that she was thinking about how she may respond, she took a moment to gather her thoughts under control and stirred the wine in her glass. After some time had passed, she eventually spoke up and said, "Drew, I'm not sure that I'm the person you should be asking for this." An inquiry that asks, "Why not?" His tone was harsh, but not unkind, and he challenged the situation. A sigh escaped her lips as she sat back in her chair. "For your information, Carly and I are not on speaking terms with each other. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of this. Also, I'm unsure whether or not anyone will want me there, or whether or not I will be of any service." The muscles in Drew's jaw tightened, but he continued to nod. "I am aware of the history that can be traced back to the two of you. However, this has nothing to do with the relationships you had in the past with Carly. With regard to how to behave, you play the moral card. I would not be here if I did not believe that you had the ability to make a difference in the situation." With a distressed expression on her face, Nina retreated. Over the course of several months, she had rationalized her actions by persuading herself that discovering Carly and Drew's involvement in insider trading was not about vengeance, but rather about justice. She could not help but feel the increasing knot in her chest, with her guilt warbling in strands of remorse that she could no longer swallow. However, now that she found herself face to face with Drew's genuine inquiry, she was unable to hide the fact that she was experiencing this sensation. "Are you unsure of what it is that you would like me to do?" However, it was a gentle inquiry. Various methods to proceed. Drew noticed that she was going through a fight on the inside, and his expression changed. "In no way am I proposing that you violate the law or put everything that you have labored so hard to achieve at danger. To put it succinctly, I require your perspective and your influence. We might be able to buy a few weeks of time so that we can construct a decent defense if you take use of this to contact other relevant sectors of the public and put pressure on the authorities. If you have this, you should use it to your advantage." Nina was fixated on him, her thoughts racing in a frenzy. The fact that she had worked her way up through the ranks in Port Charles over the course of many years earned her respect and influence. In light of this, the fact that Carly managed to exert a significant amount of influence over Carly seemed to be the thread that, to me, was so humorous. "What gives you the impression that I would be willing to do this?" she asked, but her voice was hardly audible of a whisper when she did so. Drew stated, "Because you aren't who everyone thinks you are," and he did it with the sincerity of a fellow human being. "Because they are wrong about you. During my time with Wiley and Sunny, I observed you. In your concern for a large number of individuals, Nina, you show concern. I believe that you are aware, on some level, that this is the best course of action." This struck a chord with me since, in his words, Nina clenched her teeth, and her emotions did not appear to be in order. Would she be able to put those feelings behind her for the sake of Carly? But would she be able to assist the lady who had caused her so much suffering? The choice is up to you. Nina paused for a considerable amount of time before slowly nodding her head. "You can count on me to pick up the phone a few times. Come on over and check out what I can do for you." Drew gave off an image of relief. "No, Nina, it is a pleasure for me. Your comprehension of the significance of this is completely lacking. The moment she put her hand in front of him, she was able to stop him. To clarify, I am not doing this for Carly. Rather, I am doing it for you. I am doing it for you. And if it turns out that this endeavor was unsuccessful, I won't be the one who is held responsible for it. As he stood there, that was fair enough, he said. We'll see about that. In my opinion, that went much beyond what I could have hoped for. During the time that Drew was leaving the rooftop, Nina sat back in her chair and gazed up at the night sky. Despite the fact that she had taken the initial step towards something that she did not feel completely at ease with, she was aware that Drew was correct. It was not always simple to act in a morally responsible manner, and even when it was, it frequently came at a price. She would make calls and exercise her authority the next day, but for the time being, she gave herself permission to pause and really immerse herself in the enormity of the decision she had made. She realized that this one choice would alter the course of history in Port Charles irrevocably, regardless of what transpired after it.
In the cell with me, and then he ordered them to kill us. Do, Felicia. I mean, there was no bomb to defuse, there was no bullets to dodge. I think we felt that.
When Anna Devane entered the interview room at the Port Charles Police Department, which was tiled and had low lighting, there was a sense of apprehension in the air. She moved across the floor in high heels, and the sound of her heels clicking could be heard coming from her feet. As a result of her years of experience working as an agent for the Wall Street Journal, she had learned how to read people and what to say to bring them to the point of breaking. Her experience with high-pressure situations was nothing new to her. Regarding the interview that took place today, it was stated that it was not really about cracking a case. It was a personal one. And someone named Victor Marshall, who had connections that went deep into the Casadine family, was sitting across the table from her. He was the person she had been attempting to get in touch with. There was no change in her demeanor in response to Anna's nonchalant posture and disarming smile, both of which she was well aware of. His fingerprints were all over the latest explosion that occurred at the Port Charles ports, even though the evidence has not yet given a definitive answer to the question. A great manipulator, he had left his fingerprints on the explosion, which bore his signature. "Mr. Marshall," she inquired, maintaining a calm tone. After pulling out a chair and placing a folder in front of her on the table, she sat down the opposite side of him. The door has not been opened by her as of yet. Her objective was to pique his interest in the contents of the container. Although Victor pretended to be uninterested, he did raise an eyebrow. "Agent Devane, I would want to inquire about the person with whom I have the pleasure of working. There is no way that you could possibly be here to talk about the weather." Anna smiled, a smirk appearing on her lips as she did so. "Mr. Marshall, I favor encounters that are open and honest. Would it be possible for us to take a moment to avoid the niceties?" As Victor sat back in his chair, the grin that was already on his face became much more pronounced. "Absolutely. Let's go ahead and do this. This is the location of the trap." When Anna opened the folder, she discovered photographs that had been shot of the dockyard fat not long after the explosion. Out of the shining paper, twisted metal, containers that had been burned, and trash that had been blackened emerged. In an effort to divert her attention away from Victor, she shifted one of the portraits so that it was facing Vic. The tone of her voice was measured as she stated, "This is what remains of Dock 42 after the explosion that occurred last week. Did you even know about it? You had heard about it, right?" After taking a glance at the picture, Victor gave a brief shrug. "It is very tragic." "No, I cannot say that I am," she responded. She moved closer to Anna, the intensity of her gaze increasing as she did so. "Do you have any sense? Dock 42 is a significant import location for Casadine freight, which is the primary reason for this factor. Additionally, you are at least a name on the dockmaster's logs, and those logs go back a few months prior to the current time. Do you think you could explain that to me? Victor laughed, and it was a hoarse laugh that was quite annoying. I promise you that it is a coincidence. I will tell you that. Being legitimate in the business deals that I've been getting involved in is the only thing that I've been doing. During the course of their chat, there was a small lull, which Anna let to continue. She was observing not only the words, but also the manner in which he transported himself physically. His hand twitched slightly, and his jaw tightened, both of which indicated the same thing. He had been dishonest with us. Then, with a slight bend of her head, she continued, "Legitimate business. Taking this into consideration, would you be able to explain to me why it was stated that one of your buddies ran away from the site right before the explosion?" This caused Victor's smile to become frozen for a little period, but he swiftly recovered from it. "I am unable to control where people go, Agent Devine," she said. "Because he drove away, it is not my problem. It is his problem." The expression on Anna's face was quite difficult to decipher as she folded her hands on the table. The fact that the same associate was in possession of a detonator makes that a hilarious thing to happen. Furthermore, when we inquired about the origin of the device, he stated that you had provided it to him because you had handed it to him. The composure that Victor had lost was swiftly replaced by a chuckle, but he quickly recovered. He was turning up the heat that was already present. "Agent Devane, it is to your advantage to not rely on the reports of other people. This is something that you were not taught by your department, and I will not bet a thing on it." No sign of a flinch could be seen on Anna's face. Rather than that, she reached into the folder and retrieved an additional piece of evidence, which was a list of transactions. In doing so, she slipped it in the direction of Victor. The explanation that Ms. Branham provided was as follows. "This is a record of payments that have been made to a shell company that you control. A total of payments, all of which were made with the intention of purchasing explosive substances. Are you also able to refute that?" When Victor's gaze briefly strayed to the page, he noticed that his mask was beginning to break apart for the very first time. With the swagger that he displayed, he almost immediately covered it up. At this point, you are clinging to hope by a thread. In the best-case scenario, this is circumstantial evidence. When Anna smiled, it was a small, chilly smile, and it caused a shudder to spread around the room. "Victor, I don't have any complaints. This is what I will provide for you. However, I have been playing this game for a significantly longer period of time than you have, and I am victorious each and every time." She slouched all the way back in her chair, as if she had an infinite amount of time on her hands. Her manner was unforced and effortless. However, as you can see, I do not rely entirely on the data that is physically present. When people are under a lot of pressure, I believe that they are unable to keep their stories to themselves the majority of the time. That being said, let's give this one more go right now. When you were at Dock 42 the week before last, what were you doing there? With a sneering expression on his face, Victor's confidence began to fall away. After that, he suddenly and unexpectedly retorted, "I wasn't." Anna raised one eyebrow, giving the impression that she was astonished. The film from the security cameras offers a different story, which is why it becomes so compelling. The overcoming of the challenges. Anna hesitated once more, went closer, and her voice subsided to the point where it was almost a whisper. "Victor, you've arrived to a crossroads in your journey. Either you can cooperate with me and get out of this place for a bargain, or you can remain mute and bear the blame for this. Both options are available to you. It is up to you to decide. It is impossible to ignore the fact that you will be defeated by this. A portion of the self-assurance that Victor had been enjoying began to disintegrate as he faded away in the presence of her unrelenting gaze. It was with a voice that was completely devoid of confidence that he mumbled, "You're bluffing." "And who am I?" It was Anna who refuted the argument. A chilly tone could be heard as she tapped on the folder. A statement was made by the speaker that declared, "I have more than enough to link you to the explosion. On the other hand, if you tell me who you are working with, I might be able to assist you, as we are both aware that you were not the great mind behind this." After the significance of her comments started to set in, Victor hesitated for a moment. He was well aware that he was about to be ambushed. After he had finished speaking, he was so muffled that it was difficult to hear him. According to what he said, "You don't know what you're asking." Anna's temperament became more gentle, despite the fact that she was so small. "Let me ask you to confess," she said. "Believe me when I say that no matter what arrangement you believe you have made with your employer, please know that it is not sufficient for your independence, and it is not sufficient for your life." Victor's swagger was completely absent from his expression as he gazed down at the table they were sitting at. There was a brief period of silence in the room, with the only sound being the soft whirring of the ceiling lights. He finally raised his head, and when he did, he saw a face that was white. It was a shaky voice that he used to pronounce the word "fine." "If you ask me, I will tell you anything that you are interested in knowing. You are now responsible for ensuring that I will be safe while I am in your care." While Anna was giving a nod, I was unable to determine what her facial expression was. "I suppose that I will simply have to wait and see what you have to say about it. Participate in a discussion." The outcomes that followed. Even though Victor was still working on his confession, there were pieces of the puzzle that were starting to fit together. As a matter of fact, he was not the genius. Rather, he was merely a piece in a much larger game. But because of him, Anna was able to determine the identity of the person who had been the victim of the crime. When Anna left the room where she had been interrogated, she felt content, but she was also aware that the ordeal was not yet done. First and foremost, the confession made by Victor marked the beginning. Anna was certain that the shadowy entity that was pulling the strings at this very moment was still there someplace, and she was certain that they would not give up without a struggle. At the moment, however, she had everything that she required. Anna Devane held the power of justice in the palm of her hand, and she had no intention of abdicating her grip on it.